Welcome to the Colleague Experience episode. Get ready to explore bold insights, daring experimentation, and groundbreaking leadership strategies. Today, we're diving into the fascinating world of human categorization, from the FORE tribe's sophisticated systems to how modern organizations balance efficiency and diversity to drive innovation. Let's start. The FORE tribe, an indigenous people living in the mountains of Papua New Guinea, had a unique custom. They used to eat their dead. Yes, exactly like that. Even though this practice caused many diseases that the tribe members suffered from, it never occurred to them to stop this distinctive tradition. Disgusting. Disgusting. But you have to admit, it was efficient. In 1965, an expedition from the American Museum of Natural History set out for the high mountains of Papua New Guinea to study animals that had adapted to live at elevations above 1,900 meters. There, they encountered the FORE people for the first time. The expedition discovered that the FORE also divided the animals they knew in their environment into groups and subgroups, just like the scientists did. What was even more remarkable was that their classification system was very similar to that of modern science. Following this discovery, the expedition conducted a fascinating experiment. They took 7 men from the tribe and moved them to a place they had never visited before, located at an elevation of 1,100 meters. It's important to note that in this region there's a natural break at 1,500 meters elevation, meaning the animals living below this height are different from those living above it. The 7 FORE men, therefore, were unfamiliar with the animals in this new location where they had arrived, and yet they classified them into groups and subgroups very similar to those used by modern researchers. We, like other animals, are categorizing creatures. In nature, this is a very important trait. It's important to classify plants to distinguish between those that are poisonous and those that aren't. It's important to classify the animals in our environment to distinguish which ones are predators and which ones aren't. This is important. And you know what? It's also efficient. When we see a tiger, we don't need to wonder whether this particular tiger belongs to a subgroup of tigers that decided to become vegetarians. We can save the time required to find out from him what his position is, regarding the question of whether we're worthy of serving as his meal. Even though there are no 2 identical tigers in nature, and no 2 identical humans, all humans and all tigers know very well what's going to happen if they meet. And that's why the modern phenomenon of diversity-seeking recognition is a phenomenon that creates anxiety for many people. This happens because the inability to classify those in front of us into familiar and clear groups undermines the familiar stability and order. That's why some would prefer to turn back the clock to a reality where there are distinct groups that are easy to distinguish and classify precisely, just like we distinguish between tigers and house cats. There are women, and there are men. There are whites, and there are blacks, and there are... Well, the point is clear. This phenomenon is also a familiar organizational one, perhaps much more familiar than it seems to us at first thought. In many ways, organizational reality is quite similar to the jungle, isn't it? Competition for resources in the environment is very aggressive. The ecosystem changes frequently. Sometimes one mistake is enough to get devoured. Therefore, the natural tendency of organizations and those who manage them is to be as efficient as possible. We try to maximize the efficiency of the organization's internal processes because this creates a competitive advantage and a greater chance to survive and thrive in the jungle. So here's the thing. No, that's not always the case. Let us explain. We'll start with an assumption that says the more similarity there is between people in a system, the more efficient it will be. And conversely, the more diversity and variety there is in the system, the more different perspectives there will be on the same reality, and from here, there will be a need to create synthesis between these perspectives, which will take time and consume resources. Not efficient. Now, in parentheses, we must say that unfortunately we're forced to replace the word diversity and also its cousin, variety. After they became the ultimate PC test of every organization, it's no longer possible to go back and use the natural and basic meaning of these words. These words are now reserved for social and political struggles that have expropriated their use. You can agree with these struggles or not, but these concepts are definitely no longer neutral. Close parentheses. Let's say we're holding a discussion about the organization's marketing strategy. Who do we invite to the discussion? Those who are connected to marketing and strategy. Who probably won't we invite? Everyone else. Why? Because it's not efficient. Why isn't it efficient? Because they don't understand marketing or strategy. And besides, it's not their job. And they certainly have plenty of work to do in the area that is their responsibility, so why bother them with something else? What's behind this line of thinking? Because we love to categorize. We don't see people. We see titles, roles. And as we said, this is very efficient. But sometimes it's really not desirable to be efficient. There are situations where it's worth giving up the filter that screens people according to their roles and simply see people. There's a situation that almost certainly every manager has encountered in their career. Let's say you're calling a meeting with several people to think together in a kind of brainstorm about some problem. Among others, you invite an employee and also their team leader. Then, somewhere at the beginning of the meeting, suddenly it happens. They exchange hidden messages, and after a few seconds, the employee gets up and leaves the room while the team leader throws into the air, "I know their opinion. I'll represent them here." Now, we need to honestly say that many times it really is right to be efficient and not waste two resources on the same problem. But sometimes it's complete foolishness, because sometimes we're not looking for the employee's opinion. We're looking for their participation, for the interaction of their experience and knowledge with that of others in the room, hoping that something new will be born from these connections. Take our experience working with a biotech startup, developing a new drug delivery system. The leadership team wanted to make a quick decision about their clinical trial design, and initially planned to have just the head of clinical operations represent the entire clinical team's perspective. But when we insisted on including the lab technicians and junior researchers who actually handled the day-to-day experiments, their insights about practical implementation challenges led to a completely different trial protocol that ultimately saved the company 6 months and significant resources. The inefficient inclusion of diverse voices prevented a costly strategic mistake. We understand that this isn't efficient, but we equally understand that there are challenges for which efficient processes aren't suitable. And we're also clear that when it comes to complex questions that don't have simple answers, what matters isn't the knowledge that exists between the ears of people in the room, but rather the interactions between them. And the more diversity and variety there is in the room from a functional and conceptual perspective, the greater the chance that from these interactions something new will grow that wouldn't have emerged if we just tried to be efficient. Consider another example from our work with a software company struggling with user adoption of their enterprise platform. The engineering leadership was convinced they needed more sophisticated features and initially wanted to limit the product roadmap discussion to senior developers and product managers. However, when we brought in customer support representatives, sales engineers, and even the office manager who happened to be a former teacher, the conversation shifted entirely. The teacher's perspective on learning curves led to insights about user onboarding that the technical team had completely missed. The inefficient inclusion of non-technical voices revealed that the adoption problem wasn't about missing features. It was about overwhelming new users with complexity. But, and this is a big but, if you're going for diversity and variety, you need to work differently. There's no point in trying to run an efficient discussion and bring many people to it, so there will be many opinions. It's a bit like pressing the gas pedal and the brake at the same time. Lots of wasted energy and zero progress. If there's an issue important enough to explore in a room full of perspectives, give it the respect it deserves and pause the efficiency for a moment. And that wraps up today's podcast. We explored how the FORE tribe's unique practices and classification systems reflect the human tendency to categorize, and how embracing diversity over mere efficiency can lead to innovation in fields like biotech and software. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and share this episode with your friends and colleagues so they can also stay updated on the latest news and gain powerful insights. Stay tuned for more updates.